Moe was born in Brooklyn, New York, neighborhood of Bensonhurst, to Solomon Horowitz and Jenny Gorovitz, the fourth born of 5 brothers of Lithuanian Jewish ancestry. He was named Moe when he was younger and later called himself Harry. Howard's parents and brothers, Benjamin and Irving, were not involved in show business, but he, his older brother Shemp Howard, and younger brother Curly Howard all eventually became known as members of the Three Stooges. He loved to read. As older brother Jack recalled, "I had many Horatio Alger books, and it was Moe's greatest pleasure to read them." They started his imaginative mind working and gave him ideas by the dozen. I think they were instrumental in putting thoughts into his head to become a person of good character and to become successful. This helped him in his acting career in later years, such as in memorizing his lines quickly and easily. Moe's bowl-cut hairstyle became his trademark, despite his mother initially refusing to cut his hair in childhood, letting it grow to shoulder length, as I mentioned earlier. And again, he secretly cut his hair in his backyard shed after being frequently teased in school. Howard began to develop an interest in acting to the point where his grades worsened and he began to play hooky from school. He said, "I used to stand outside the theater knowing the truant officer was looking for me. I would stand there till someone came along and then ask them to buy my ticket. It was necessary for an adult to accompany a juvenile to the theater. When I succeeded, I'd give him my 10 cents. That's all it cost. And I go to the top of the balcony where I put my chin on the rail and watch spellbound from the first act to the last. I would usually select the actor I liked the most and follow his performance throughout the play." Despite his waning attendance, Howard graduated from PS 163 in Brooklyn, but dropped out of Erasmus High School after only 2 months, ending his formal education. So he was a high school dropout. He took an electric shop course for his parents' wishes, but quit after a few months to pursue a career in show business. And aren't we all glad that he did that? Howard started off running unpaid errands at the Vitagraph Studios in Midwood, Brooklyn. He was rewarded at first with bit parts in movies and production there until 1910 fire destroyed the films done there, and with it most of Howard's work. But already in 1909 he had met a young man named Ernst Leah Nash, later known as Ted Healy, who was later to provide a significant boost to his career aspirations. In 1912 they both held a summer job working in Annette Kellerman's aquatic act as diving girls. Moe continued his attempts at gaining show business experience by singing in a bar with his older brother Shemp until their father put a stop to it, and in 1914 by joining a performing troupe on a Mississippi riverboat showboat for the next 2 summers. In 1921 he joined Ted Healy in a vaudeville routine. In 1923 Moe saw Shemp in the audience during a theater performance and yelled at him from the stage. Shemp responded by heckling Moe, and the two brothers' amusing bickering during the performance resulted in Healy immediately hiring Shemp Howard as a permanent part of the act. Moe retired from this act in June 1925 after his marriage, Helen Schlangberger, and went into real estate with his mother. Meanwhile, Healy's act with frequent stooge Shemp Howard went on to national fame in the Schubert Brothers' Night in Spain, which had a successful Broadway run as well as national tour. It was during a night in Spain at the end of a 4-month run in Chicago, Illinois, that Healy recruited vaudeville violinist Larry Fine. Curly, not Curly. That was Larry Fine, the guy with the curly hair, to join the troupe in March 1929. After the show ended in late November, Healy signed for the Shubert's new revue, A Night in Venice, and re-recruited Moe Howard out of retirement to rejoin the act in 1928. In rehearsals in 1929, Howard, Larry Fine, and Shemp came together for the first time as a trio, and that was again in 1928. When A Night in Venice closed in March 1930, Healy and the trio toured for a while as Ted Healy and his Racketeers, later changed to Ted Healy and his Stooges. So you might say the birth of the Stooges occurred December 1928 and carried on through with Ted Healy, 1930 on, when Ted Healy called himself and his group the Stooges. So now we have Ted Healy and his Stooges. We're on the verge of hitting the big time. Made their first movie called Soup to Nuts in 1930, featuring Healy and his four Stooges. Moe was billed as Harry, Howard, Shemp, Larry, and Fred Sanborn. Sanborn had been with Healy's troupe since 1929 as one of the Stooges in A Night in Venice. And this was for Fox Films. A disagreement with Healy led Moe, Larry, and Shemp to strike out on their own as Howard, Fine, and Howard. Interesting. And on August 28, 1930, they premiered that act at LA's Paramount Theater. Joining the RKO vaudeville circuit, they toured for almost 2 years, eventually dubbing themselves as Three Lost Souls and taking on Jack Walsh as their straight man. In July 1932, Moe, Larry, and Shemp were approached by Healy to rejoin for the new Shubert Broadway revue Passing Show of 1932, and the three accepted the offer. On August 16th, 1932, during passing rehearsals in New York, Ted walked out on the Shuberts over a contract dispute. On August 19, 1932, Shemp gave his notice, having not seeing eye to eye with the hard-drinking and sometimes belligerent Healy, and decided to remain with Passing, which closed in September after paying reviews of its first roadshow performances in Detroit and Cincinnati. Shemp landed at Vitaphone Studios in Brooklyn in May 1933, where he stayed for almost 4 years. So now, what we are going to be seeing is the birth of Curly Howard. And that is on August 20, the day after Shemp's departure. Moe suggested adding his younger brother Jerome, Babe, when he was called by Moe and Shemp, to the act. Contrary to some sources, there was no search for a replacement. Healy originally passed on Jerry, but Jerry was so eager to join the act that is Jerry, meaning Jerome, that he shaved off his mustache and hair and ran on the stage during Healy's routine. This is Curly, actually. See, they thought Curly looked too good, too handsome with his thick head of hair, his mustache, so they got him to shave it all off. So that one little incident got Healy to hire Jerry, who took the stage name of Curly. The new lineup of Moe, Larry, and Curly premiered with Ted on stage at Cleveland's RKO Palace, August 27, 1932. Hence the birth of the Three Stooges with Curly. Early 1933, during appearances in L.A., Healy and the Stooges were hired by MGM as nut or crazy comics to liven up feature films and short subjects with their crazy antics. So this is what happened after their association with Ted Healy. After a number of appearances in MGA films, Healy was being groomed as a solo character comedian, with Healy pursuing his own career in 1934. His Stooges, now renamed the Three Stooges, signed with Columbia Pictures, where they stayed until December 1957, making 190 comedy shorts. With Healy's departure, Moe Howard assumed Healy's prior role as the aggressive take-charge leader of the Three Stooges, a short-tempered bully prone to slapstick violence against the other two Stooges. But despite his outwardly rather cruel demeanor towards his pal, Moe was also very loyal and protective of the other Stooges on film, keeping them from harm and, should it befall them, doing whatever it took to save them. He emphasized in his 1977 book that the ill-tempered aspects of his on-screen persona did not reflect his real personality. He also boasted of being a shrewd businessman by wisely investing the money made from his film career, but the Stooges received no subsequent royalties or residuals from any of their many shorts. They were paid a flat amount for each one, and Columbia owned the rights and profits thereafter. Sad. However, according to Larry Fine in the 1970s, Columbia allowed the Stooges to do live tours where they were not filming in exchange for half salary during those months. Fine indicated that the profits from the tours substantially increased their yearly take. Columbia released its first Three Stooges short, Woman Haters, in 1934, where their Stooge characters were not quite fully formed. It was not a Stooge comedy in the classic sense, but rather a romantic farce. Columbia was then making a series of two real musical novelties with the dialogue spoken in rhyme, and the Stooges were recruited to support comedian Marjorie White. Only after the Stooges became established as short subject stars were the main titles changed to give the Stooges top billing. The version seen on TV and video is this reissue print. Their next film, Punch Drunks, 1934, was the only short film written entirely by the Three Stooges, with Curly as a reluctant boxer who goes ballistic every time he hears "Pop Goes the Weasel." And there are a number of other shorts that kind of stand out. Three Little Pigskins, 1934, with Lucille Ball. Pop Goes the Easel, 1935. Hoi Polloi, 1935, in which two professors make a bet trying to turn the Three Stooges into gentlemen. Very, very funny. Kind of a play on Pygmalion, I would say, or My Fair Lady. In the 1940s, the Three Stooges became topical, making several anti-Nazi short films. You Nazi Spy, 1940, 1941, I'll Never Heil Again, etc., etc. After Shemp rejoined the act, Moe, Shemp, and Larry shot a television pilot for ABC called Jerks of All Trades. On May 1946, during the filming of Half-Wit's Holiday, Curly suffered a stroke. He had already suffered a series of them prior to the filming of Beer Barrel Polecats, and he was replaced by Shemp, who agreed to return to the group, but only until Curly would be well enough to rejoin. Although Curly recovered enough to appear and hold that lion in a cameo appearance only, he was pretty much finished, and the Three Stooges film pretty much just had Moe, Curly, and Shemp, and Curly suffered a series of stroke, again, which led to his death at age 48 in 1952. So, this particular pilot that Moe, Shemp, and Larry shot, Jerks of All Trades, that I mentioned a moment ago, I took a single day to film and was never aired. It was actually what they call a kinescope film of three-camera television production. most likely to replicate proposed live broadcasts. So B.B. Kane of Columbia Pictures stopped the show from being broadcast. Kane warned the Stooges that a contract stipulation restricted them from performing in a series that might compete with their two real comedies. Columbia further threatened to cancel the boys' contract and take them to court if they tried to sell the series. To avert a legal hassle, the pilot was shelved and the project abandoned. The Kinescope film is now in public domain and widely available. The Three Stooges series of shorts continued to be popular through the 1950s. Shemp co-starred in 73 comedies. The Stooges also co-starred in a George O'Brien Western, Gold Raiders, 1951. Moe also co-produced occasional Western and musical films in the 1950s. On November 22, 1955, Shemp died of a heart attack at age 60, necessitating the need for another Stooge. Producer Jules White used old footage of Shemp to complete 4 more films, with Columbia regular Joe Palma filling in for Shemp, thus creating the fake Shemp phenomenon. Until Columbia head Harry Cohen hired Joe Besser in 1956, according to Moe's autobiography, Howard wanted a two-stooge act, and it was Cohen's idea, not Howard's, to replace Shemp as part of the act. How about that? Moe wanted to be the Two Stooges. The Stooges replaced Shemp with Joe Besser, already an established Columbia comedy short star in his own right and frequent movie supporting player. Joe, Larry, and Moe filmed 16 shorts through December 1957. Shortly before Cohen's death in February 1958, the making of short subjects came to an end. Keeping himself busy, Moe was hired by Harry Rom, an associate producer. According to Moe, stories and later scenes in a 2000 made-for-TV biopic that he was forced to take a job as a gopher at Columbia are completely false. Fortunately for the Stooges, Columbia sold the Three Stooges library of short films to television under the Screen Gems name. With this, the Stooges quickly gained a new audience of young fans. Even the businessman Moe Howard put together a new Stooges act with burlesque and screen comic Joe DeRita, dubbed Curly Joe because of his vague resemblance to Curly Howard. As the new Three Stooge, DeRita, like both Shemp, Howard, and Joe Besser, had also starred in a number of comedy shorts. The revitalized trio starred in 6 feature-length movies: Have Rocket Will Travel, Snow White and the Three Stooges, The Three Stooges Meet Hercules, The Three Stooges in Orbit, The Three Stooges Go Around the World in the Days, and The Outlaws Is Coming. Howard, Larry, and Curly Joe continued to make live appearances, many notable guest appearances, particularly in It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, as 3 firemen who appear for only a few seconds, and then a number of other programs but in which Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin even appeared. And they also appeared in numerous television shows: The Steve Allen Show, Here's Hollywood, Ed Sullivan Show, The Joey Bishop Show, Truth or Consequences. Later years, the men were paid residuals for their later efforts and continued to receive the bulk of the profits and sales of Stooges merchandise. Moe sold real estate when his show business life slowed down. Although he still did minor solo roles and walk-on bits in movies such as Don't Worry, We'll Think of a Title, and Dr. Death, Seeker of Souls, as well as several appearances on The Mike Douglas Show. In one of Douglas's episodes, Moe, his hair and his style popular at that time, made a surprise appearance during an interview of the writer of a Where Are They Now book. When the audience was given the chance to ask the writer about famous people, Howard asked whatever happened to the Three Stooges. Finally recognized by Douglas, he then combed his hair into his trademark style. How about that? So they didn't think they were talking to Moe until he combed his hair into that trademark style, the bowl cut. The Stooges attempted to make a final film in 1969, Cook's Tour, which was essentially a documentary of Howard, Larry, and Curly Joe out of character touring the U.S. and meeting with their fans. But the production abruptly halted on January 9, 1970. Larry suffered a major stroke during filming, paralyzing the left side of his body. As a child, I can remember seeing Larry show up after the Three Stooges cartoons that used to come on, basically asking for donations to help him out in life. It was a sad sight to see, and that's one of my real memories of the Three Stooges of when I was a child. And Larry died that year, January 24th, 1975, at age 72. Enough footage of Larry was shot so that Cook's Tour was eventually released in 52-minute version of home video. After fine stroke, Howard asked longtime Three Stooges supporting actor Emil Sitka to replace Larry, but this final lineup never shot any material at all. So that is pretty much the full history of the Three Stooges, from their beginning to basically the end of when they did not shoot any more material. And I guess you could say with the death of Larry Fine, that was pretty much the end of the Three Stooges, although I believe Moe did do some appearances here and there.